Hello and welcome. Starting out just a few minutes early. just making sure that everything is going out. Okay, here we go. Okay, looks about right. There we go. Here we go. Okay, why isn't this? Okay, what's going on? If you can see me, please do me a favor, type in the chat. I'm having a little issue on my end here. Here we go. Hello. Sorry, it took a minute there for things to check in. Oh, so nice to see you too. Thank you. Um, sorry, there was a little delay on this end, and I'm like, what's going on? So I can see all of your chats here, so thank you so much. I know today is spring forward, so thank everyone for being present. But today we have our second installment on our series this month, Restorative Yoga for Long COVID. So last week we took a look at the 3-part breath, which we'll be kind of going over again shortly, and then we'll be adding to it, coming into Bhramari, and we'll be using a mudra as well if we're comfortable with that. And then today we have 2 restorative postures. We'll be revisiting our spinal twist from last week, and we'll be adding a legs up the wall type option. So for folks who aren't comfortable with legs up the wall, no worries. We also have a posture called Stonehenge, which is a variation on that I find much more accessible myself. So again, we're going to start today with taking a moment to kind of notice our space. And by the way, if you didn't see the note, today we're using 2 blocks. I'm sitting on my bolster, but if you have a bolster present, if not, you can use a couple of bed pillows, throw pillows instead of our blocks. And I also just have a heap of blankets here to use. They're great for not just covering ourselves and staying warm, but also offering ourselves so many different types of support. The more support you have, the more personalized you can make your practice. I also have an eye pillow just in case. It helps us move into that rest and digest mode or the parasympathetic nervous response. So we'll start by finding a comfortable position to sit or lie in. If you prefer to lie down for our grounding, you can feel free. I'm going to stay seated. You can be cross-legged. Your legs can be wide open. I'm sitting in Baddha Konasana or butterfly. I have my feet together, knees apart. Bring my belly between my legs, make lots of space. And no matter how we're sitting or lying, we'll take a moment and notice the connection of the body to the object that we're sitting on or resting on. We might take a moment to notice our surroundings. I live in a city, so you might hear sirens or yelling through the windows, but make note of what's in your space as well. And then when we're ready, we'll tune into the breath. So we'll start by maybe taking a deep breath in through the nose, out through the mouth, if that's helpful for us. If we're congested and having a hard time breathing through the nose, no worries. We can breathe in and out through the mouth as well. But maybe on our exhale, we'll release with a sigh or vocalization. Doing our best to let go of the day so far, the week so far, the month so far, whatever we need to let go of. And we can take as many of these breaths as we need. And then when we're ready, we can find our way back to our natural breath, noticing the inhale and exhale. And as we continue to breathe, we'll notice where we feel the breath in the body. So we might feel it at the entry point, the nose or the mouth. We might feel it traveling through the throat. We might feel movement through the heart space, through the belly. But we also might feel it through the shoulders, through the back. There's no right or wrong answer here. We're simply noticing what's happening in our body. If we like, we can have our eyes closed or a soft gaze, whatever is most comfortable for us. We might slowly release the awareness into the rest of the body. So not just noticing the breath, but noticing any dominant sensations in the body. So maybe we notice a bit of tenderness over in this part of the body, or maybe we notice that that part of the body needs to move or stretch. And we'll make note of each of these things so that we can be as kind to ourselves as possible today. And when we're ready, we'll return to the breath. So we'll begin to move into our pranayama or breath work. If we're reclined, we might want to wake our way up to seated. We can gently roll onto the right or left side, and when we're ready, press up into a seated position. We can take any seated position that we are comfortable with. And throughout our pranayama, if we need to adjust our legs, we can do that. You're not frozen in any particular spot or position. So as we continue with our natural breath, we might see if we can shift it in and out through the nose. Again, if we're congested, breathe how we need to breathe. There's no wrong way to breathe. By shifting the breath in and out through the nose, we're helping our body produce more nitric oxide, which is really helpful for our pulmonary system. It's also part of our immune system. It's a vasodilator, and it's also been found to reservoir in the sinuses and help reduce infection. And as we continue to breathe, we might see if we can pull the breath down into the belly so that we're taking deep breaths into the diaphragm. If it's helpful, we can bring the hands against the belly, feeling it expand with the inhale and release with the exhale. And we'll continue to breathe in this fashion. And I'll explain a little bit about our pranayama today, which is Bhramari. So as we continue to breathe, we will begin on our exhale to release with a hum. So taking your breath in and humming on the exhale. And we just let it continue until we naturally run out of breath. Inhale again and hum again on the exhale. And we don't have to be doing it all at the same time. So if your breath is different than mine, that's okay. That's wonderful. Listen to your body. Work in a way that works with your body and with your lung capacity. So this might be perfect for us. But if we like, we can add in shanmuki mudra. So with that, we'll be using our hands, placing one about just below the corners of the eyes. The second will come next to the nose, the ring finger over the lips, and the pinky just below the lips. And then we can take the thumbs and we'll press that against the tragus. So you might not want to do that quite yet because it'll be hard to hear. But when we're going to continue the breath, so on the inhale, Exhale, humming and closing the ears. We're going to do this 3 times. When we're ready, we can release the arms down, continuing to breathe. So Bhramari also helps us increase the amount of nitric oxide. It also helps kind of clear the mind. It's hard if you're like me and you have lots of thoughts wandering through the head. It's kind of hard to do that with the humming. If it's an unusual sensation, that's okay. You don't need to plug the ears. That kind of makes it a bit deeper. But we can practice this several times a day, generally for 3 to 5 breaths at a time. For some folks, it helps clear the sinuses as well, which can be advantageous, especially at this time of year or if we're dealing with long COVID. So when we're ready, we're going to make our way into our first restorative posture. So as I mentioned, we're revisiting our supported twist. And if supported twist last week didn't feel great, I'll also be offering a second option of supported child's pose. So to start, I'm going to come down to the mat. And I'm going to set myself up. So I know I'm going to need at least 3 blankets to start. But you can experiment as well. So again, we have a few options. The first option is to take our bolster or our 2 bed pillows, or as many bed pillows as we like, down through the center of the mat. And we're going to start with it. Well, I'm going to start with it on my right side. If it's easier for you to start on the left side, you can do that too. So my hip is just against the bolster. So option 1 is with our bolster, and then we'll come into our twist. So rotating the heart space towards the bolster and hinging forward. So if you have that mobility, go for it. If you need to raise it up a little bit more, we can throw a few blankets on it to help raise the support. I am going to use a different variation because I don't have a lot of space between my belly and my thighs. So I'm going to bring 1 block to the high position and 1 to the low position to create a ramp. If you don't have blocks, you can just put some of the throw pillows or stack a few blankets until you can get your pillows or bolster at an incline. And again, I might want blankets here. I might want another blanket folded at the top for more support under the head. Some folks like a blanket on either side for support under the arms. So really it's about finding what works for you. I'm going to grab 1 more blanket to put behind my bolster because I always need support under 1 arm. So once we're at the base of the bolster, again, our legs can be in any position they're comfortable with. I tend to have 1 pulled in and 1 extended to start, and then we can adjust as we go. So I'm going to turn my heart space towards my bolster. If you have a belly, it might be helpful to pull the belly up onto the lap to create more opportunity for twist, because what we're trying to do is create space through the back and space through the lower abdomen and ribs. So as I do this, I'm turning my heart space towards my bolster, wherever it is, and then I'm going to start to hinge forward and rest down. And this is where my head pillow is helpful. Now, if the heart space doesn't turn towards the bolster very much, that's fine too. We can start by coming directly down to the side and then slowly pull the left shoulder forward. reaching the hand maybe towards the ground. And we're going to let gravity pull us deeper into the twist. So no matter what our flexibility level is, we can create an environment where we can relax into the twist. And once we're here, if we like, we can change the leg position. Sometimes it's more comfortable to stack the legs. It might be more comfortable to stretch both the legs out nice and wide. Anything that feels good. And once we're here, we might take a few deep breaths again, in through the nose, out through the mouth, if that's helpful. Allowing ourselves to release, to relax into the posture. And we'll be on this side for about 4 minutes. If this does not feel comfortable, what we can do is turn this into a restorative child's pose. So for that, we can leave our bolster where it is. I'm going to lay down one blanket because my knees are a little sore today. So that I'm kneeling on this to start. I'm going to come into tabletop over my support. And then bring the soles of the feet together, knees apart, press the sit bones back, and rest against the support of the blocks, the bolster, the blankets, the pillows, continuing to breathe. So whichever variation feels best. And once we've had a few moments to settle in, we might bring our attention back to the breath and notice where we're feeling the breath now. We tend to mostly use the upper part, front part of the lungs. So you usually feel movement through the heart space. Earlier we were pulling it down into the belly, down into the diaphragm. But now we're going to see if we can feel movement through the back. Feel the space between the shoulder blades expand as we breathe. Feel the low ribs along the back expand as we inhale, release as we exhale. Beautiful. We're going to transition to the opposite side. So if we're in child's pose, we're going to stay where we are. But if we are in our supported spinal twist, we'll bring the hands beneath the shoulders, slowly press up, open the heart space back through center, and then we can switch to the opposite side. So some folks might simply roll to the opposite side. I'm going to rebuild my props on this side so I can stay facing y'all. But we'll enter the same way. So our opposite leg will be against the bolster. And make space for the fact that no one has absolutely equal mobility on either side. So you need to make adjustments on this side of the body, and that's okay. So we're going to open the heart space towards the bolster, bring the hand down behind the bolster, adjust the belly if needed. Come on down. Maybe pull the left shoulder forward if we're not there already. And adjust the legs to however they need to be on this side of the body to be comfortable. And we'll be here for another 4 minutes. And if you're in child's pose and you feel like you want to exit a bit early, feel free to press up and come into any comfortable seated position, still focusing on the breath if that's comfortable for you. And we're still pulling the awareness, the attention of the breath into the back. Kind of working with our body to kind of reintroduce ourselves to breathing fully with access to the entire capacity of the lungs. Again, noticing the sensation of the breath through the back body. And maybe seeing if we can kind of remember what that feels like so that we can bring it into the rest of our day. Maybe periodically checking, noticing if we can fill the lungs, as much as is comfortable, obviously. Sometimes we'll start to cough. That's okay. Do it to the capacity that works with our body. When we're ready, we can bring the hands again beneath the shoulders, pressing up, whether we're in our supported twist or child's pose, coming back through center. Beautiful. So from here, we're going to set up for legs up the wall and its variations. So depending on which variation you use, it's going to look really different, and that's okay. We don't all have to be doing the same thing ever. So first option is to come up next to a wall, a chair, a couch, a bed, and we'll basically bring the legs up against the wall. But in order to make it more comfortable, you might want to lay down an extra blanket or two so you have support beneath the body. And we have a couple ways to enter. The first is to lie down on the floor and kind of scoot towards the wall. So you lay down as close as you can get, scoot towards the wall, and bring the legs up along the wall. The second way is my personal favorite, and that's basically where we start sitting against the wall or the object. So the wall, the bed, the couch, the chair, and then move this out of the way. I have my blanket here, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of slide my legs up as I rotate down. So from here, if we like, we can throw a blanket over the legs, kind of tucking the legs together. This is option one. If we're next to a chair, table, or bed, our legs will be folded over the chair or table. If we have an eye pillow, we can throw the eye pillow over our eyes as well. So if those are comfortable for you, you can come into those. If you are not a fan of having your legs quite that high up, especially for those of us in larger bodies, sometimes the thighs press into the belly presses into the chest into the throat, and breath becomes an issue. So again, if you're not comfortable in that position, we're going to come into a second posture called Stonehenge. So for that, I'm going to take one of my blankets, I'm going to fold it at the top for a little pillow. And I'm going to come along the length of my mat. And for this, I'm going to be using my blocks and my bolster. And if you don't have blocks, what you're going to do is stack your throw pillows and your big pillows, or your blankets and your bed pillows. And I'm going to create a bit of a table. So I have my blocks beneath, up on top. If not, this is just a large stack of bed pillows and blankets and all of that. And if we like, we can reserve one blanket to cover ourselves with if we're chilly. Or we can have pillows off to the sides to support our arms so they're not resting directly on the ground. So many options here. So to enter, what I like to do is scoot as close to my support as possible in a wide-legged position. So I have one leg on either side. Some people like to start on their side, much like in our supported twist, with their legs to one side, and then they'll roll onto their back, lifting their legs on. But I prefer this way because I have lipedema. My legs are very heavy, and it's hard to lift both at the same time sometimes. So I'm going to come down to the mat. We still might need to scoot a little bit towards our support. And then I'm going to lift one leg and the other leg onto my bench or onto my pile. And here we have our Stonehenge. We'll take a few deep breaths. Again, maybe in through the nose, out through the mouth if that's accessible to us. Excuse me. We can have our arms out to the sides as if we're in Shavasana, or we can have the hands against the body. And we'll take a few deep breaths here, allowing ourselves to rest against the support of the mat, the support of the props. Continuing to breathe here. And as always, if anyone has issue with any of the variations, please let me know in the chat and I can offer alternatives or address specific issues. So in this position, we are inviting rest into the body. We're allowing the return of blood from the legs. Take a moment and notice the space around the hips. If maybe the thigh is pressing into the belly, if so, feel free to scoot back a little bit from the wall to give yourself some space. You can always reach down, adjust the belly, pulling it away from the thighs or pressing the thighs away from the belly to give yourself a little bit more space. And legs up the wall. Sometimes our feet will get tired. That's okay. We might bring the soles of the feet together, knees apart, coming into butterfly against the wall to give our legs a bit of a rest. And then whenever we're ready, we can press back in to legs up the wall with the legs straight, if that's comfortable. We'll be taking our Shavasana, or our rest in this position. So we'll be here for the next 5 to 8 minutes. If at any point you want to exit early, feel free to roll off to the right or left side. And recline back against the mat in Shavasana, where we're lying directly against the mat with the arms and legs extended. Although feel free to put a bolster beneath your knees to lessen any issues in the low back as well. We might bring our attention back to the breath. Maybe again, pulling the breath down into the diaphragm. Filling the lower belly, the ribs, the heart space with air. We might also notice the sensation of breath being three-dimensional. How it's not just the top of the body, but also the sides expand and the breath moves into the back. We might feel the back pressing against the mat, against the floor as we inhale. We might take a moment and notice how the body feels in this moment. And if we'd like to stay here, we certainly can. But if we rather, we might start to slowly roll off onto the right or left side. So maybe sliding the legs down the wall, down the chair, taking any movement here that feels good before gently rolling onto the right or left side, or rolling off of our platform if we're in our Stonehenge. Taking a few moments lying on our side, allowing ourselves to acclimate. We want to give ourselves some time. We don't want to pop right back up. We can feel free to take any movement that we need here, maybe a stretch, maybe rolling out the wrists and ankles, maybe any movement through the head or neck. And when we feel like we are ready to come up, we can press the front hand down into the mat or the floor, coming up onto the forearm, and then from here, pressing up into a seated position. Knocking over any props you need on the way. So of course, if we are comfortable, as I mentioned, we can stay in that position for as long as we like. But if we've come up to seated, we might take a few moments, allow ourselves a little bit of free movement to kind of reconnect with the body, to notice how we're feeling now versus when we started. So maybe a little bit of movement through the head and neck, maybe rolling the shoulders in one direction and in the other. We might fold forward or come into a soft back bend. Again, we're just noticing how the body feels in the moment. And then when we're ready, we can come into any seated position that is comfortable for us. If we like, we can bring the hands together at heart center, or we can place the hands anywhere against the body that feels good. And we'll take a few deep breaths, again, maybe in through the nose, out through the mouth, or however feels best to breathe. We'll take 3 breaths together. We might take a moment to thank ourselves for making space for this practice today, for making space for rest and self-care. And I'd like to thank you all so much for sharing your practice with me. It really does mean the world to me. Next week, we will have one other session, and we'll be using the same props, although we will not need access to a wall or a chair necessarily. So you can feel free to set up wherever is comfortable for you. But I also would like to save space for any questions, any follow-ups, for any of the postures that we dealt with today, anything from last week, or any general questions. And, oh, thank you so much, Jenny. I'm so glad that you enjoyed it. And I hope to see you next week. And the recordings will stay up on YouTube, so you can practice whenever you need. Thank you so much, Kelly. Appreciate that. I'm so glad. Oh, and Mackenzie, yes, butterfly against the wall is so wonderful, and I enjoy it so much more than legs up the wall personally, because it just provides more space through the hips. There's lots of room for your belly when you bring the knees out, and there isn't quite as much downward pressure as when the legs are up. I mentioned before I have lipedema, so for me, my legs are very, very heavy and very, very tender. So opening the hips allows a lot more space, and kind of distributes the weight a little bit better than legs up the wall. But I'm so glad that you enjoyed it. That's a big favorite of mine. And also Stonehenge is a really great alternative too, because it isn't quite as intense as bringing the legs all the way up. So yeah, and if you do need a reminder as well, you can hit the notify button for next week or the week after, and then you'll get a notification when I do go live, as well. And if you aren't subscribed, please feel free. I have lots of other videos, and I'm going to be adding to it as well. Thank you, Mackenzie. See you next week. And if there aren't any other questions or asana issues, asana meaning posture, sorry. Sometimes I forget to translate that from the Sanskrit. Then I think I'll go ahead and shut down. But I'm looking forward to seeing you all next week. Thank you so much for sharing your practice with me. And I hope you have a great day. Yeah, come on over there. Yoga blocks are helpful for so many different things. Thanks.